So I want to talk about another torture device because,
Yeah.
I followed along and watched you build that bus, and now you're building a van out there, right?
Mhm. Yep.
So the bus thing, that is, I can't even fathom doing that. I am so not handy. If you put literally, I'm not joking. If you put that bus in my driveway, like you said, and every morning you're like going to get up and work on it, that bus would sit there for 1,000 years and never get finished. I couldn't do it. And on top of that, I kept thinking, I'm like, man, doesn't this dude just get sick of driving a bus? Because I know the places I have to go to hunt, and I've seen
Mhm.
you, like some of your videos. I'm like, I know where that is. Like
Yeah.
we hit up some of the same areas for sure. And I'm like, man, do you just get burned out on driving a bus around?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's so the bus, and I've said this quite a bit, but I've probably talked way more people out of buying a bus than into buying a bus. And there's nothing wrong with a bus, and you can do a lot of cool stuff with it. And for my purposes, like for anybody who's listening that doesn't know about the bus project, basically I took an old school bus, turned it into my rolling hunting shack, and have spent the last few years using it as a rolling billboard for public land advocacy and kind of raising awareness about public land issues, different bills that are in the legislation, basically anything like that people need to speak up about. That's kind of been the whole idea behind the bus. So going back to that, yeah, when the bus is in camp, it is amazing,
Yeah.
but it is not pleasant to drive. It's either too hot or too cold. It's loud. It doesn't track down the road all that well. So you have to you're driving it the whole time. It's
Yeah.
not, there's no road hypnosis in a bus. So, people, you always think like, oh, I'll just, whatever, I'll just get there in a day. Well, if you drive for a whole day, you're like wiped out for the next day because it's
Yep.
just exhausting. But no, that's where the van comes in. So,
Yep.
so now the bus gets to transition into more of an event rig. I actually am taking it in a few weeks. I'll have it down in Minneapolis for the Pheasant Fest, but I'll have it at Total Archery Challenges and where else am I going to take it? Oh, Game Fair in Minnesota, and just kind of stuff where it's a drive, but it's not like I'm covering the country.
Yep.
But yeah, transitioning now into the van, and my brother and I are doing that build together, which is fun. But yeah, that one is, I can drive the speed limit. There's cruise control. There's heat. There's AC.
Yep.
It's a lot more. It's just a lot nicer to drive.
Oh, I don't doubt that for a second.
Yeah.
Have you ever been to Game Fair before?
Yeah. I was
Okay.
there last year, actually. I had the bus. We were kind of parked. We got in at the last minute, so we were kind of parked like off to the side a little bit. But yeah, I'm excited to go back this year, and I'll be, if you know Lee Chose and Boss Shot Shells and those guys, he's good friends with the owner of Game Fair.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've been figuring out how do we turn that whole avenue into kind of a party, I guess.
That last year was the first year I didn't speak at Game Fair in probably 10 years. It's
Wow.
it's 10 minutes from my house. So if you need a place to stay, literally
Okay.
I'm 10
Perfect.
minutes from Game Fair, and I used to speak every day for Outdoor News there, and
Yep.
last year I was like, man, I can burn up 6 days of my life doing this, or I can go fish with my kids. And
Yeah.
it's right before hunting season starts, and I know I'm going to be gone. So last year I went because I love seeing the dogs, and I take my little girls. But
Sure.
anybody who doesn't know what the Game Fair is, it's in the suburbs of the Twin Cities. It is a wild event where everybody brings their dogs, and I don't know what the numbers are lately, but I heard at one point it was like 50,000 dogs a weekend or something going through there. It's
Yep.
if you love sporting dogs, it is incredible. There's
Yeah.
all kinds of bumper challenges and dock diving, and it's just all based around the dogs, and it is a really, really cool event.
Yeah, no, it is. That was the first time I had been there. I had actually previously I had bought the booth space for Yeti for that event, but I didn't actually attend it. So it was cool to go down and see it firsthand. Yeah, we had an absolute blast.
Yeah, there's nothing like it in the country. It's
Yeah.
the only thing like it. It's 2 weekends in August, Friday, Saturday, Sundays, and it's really, really neat. I will say this before we move on. If you're in the market for a puppy, do not go to game fair because
Nope.
you'll buy one.
Yeah,
And
you might buy more than one. Yeah.
well, I talked to, I mean, that's a big deal. There's a lot of breeders there with, they got their puppies, and there's a lot of impulsive puppy buying there. So just if you're not, if you don't have a lot of self-control and you might be leaning into a new pup, maybe stay away or do your research beforehand. But yeah, that's
or just
cool.
leave cash at home.
Yeah. Well, they probably take credit cards now.
I'm sure. Yeah.
But yeah, that's a neat place, man. That's a neat event. The Pheasants Forever, the Pheasant Fest is pretty cool too. I'll probably see you down there as well.
Cool.
Let's move on to some deer, man. So you just got back from Arizona.
Yes.
Was this your first time hunting down there?
No, I've actually been down there the last 3 years. Yeah. So it's third year in a row going down with Newberg and the crew.
Mm-hmm. And
it's awesome. So the first year I actually bought a deer tag and chased them around. I had just come off of SHOT Show and I got really sick that week. And so I hunted for 2 days, spent 2 days in bed. And then, the third day I was out, but I wasn't doing much. Yeah. And then, actually last year I just bought a small game license and went down and shot photos, for Newberg and all the guys that were there. And then this year my brother bought a tag and, I was going to buy a tag if he shot one early. So rather than both of us trying to hunt all day. I just, have been, the last 2 years have been actually pretty relaxing for me. Yep. I've been, just shooting photos and enjoying this Arizona sunshine.
Isn't it a weird, because you'd think like you'd feel like you were missing out, right? If you're just running a camera. And I mean, I do the same thing. My favorite thing is to go on a trip with some of my buddies and kill right away. And then I can just follow them around with my camera and go scout. And it's just like it's so much more relaxing, and I forget how enjoyable it is. Yeah, no,
I love it. I live in Fargo now, and so just getting out of the cold for a week is great, and go hang out with the group of guys that Randy puts together for that hunt. It's always an awesome group, and like going down there, sure, we're deer hunting or whatever, but we get to have these discussions in camp at night about really big things, not only public lands and conservation, but like the future of hunting and hunting, hunter recruitment and all of the different things that can be done or should be done, or, different, helping people understand, like Aaron Warbritton and the hunting public guys were down there last week.
Yep.
And we had a big discussion. He actually ran a, influencer summit at ATA show.
Yep.
And basically we started the conversation about, as people on social media in the hunting space, how do we start to correct the trajectory that we're on and really paint hunting in a positive light the majority of the time? I mean, you can't police everybody, you can't get to everybody, you can't whatever, but if we have the key accounts within the space that are doing things the right way, that just is going to go a long way. So it's cool to spend time with a group of like-minded people who have thought about stuff like this a lot. But yeah, man, we'll go back to deer hunting now. Those little things are hard to hunt.
Yep.
And
Coues Deer, by the way, is what he's referring to.
Coues Deer. But you and I, when we talked last week, or whenever that was, when we talked, last week, I was talking about kind of what we found and some of the different ideas that we had come up with for next year, and just kind of trying to think outside the box, because simply doing spot and stock Coues Deer hunting is obviously not impossible, but it's no easy task.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, there are people who get that done fairly frequently, but it's a small group of people. You're breathing some rarefied air there. And that, that Coues Deer hunting has gotten really popular lately, compared to what it was for a long time, because people are exposed to it. But it's one of those things that's just, again, like if you're really not into, like if you've never been on a traveling over the road trip, like that's probably don't start there.
No, like that's not the one.
Maybe work your way up. And I'm always curious to hear about that. Randy invited me down there for that this year, and I just couldn't. Just traveling to Arizona this time of year, I was like, I want to go so bad. I just couldn't bring myself to do it. I've never hunted them myself. I've done a ton of research down there, and I've got some spots I'd like to go look at, but it's just, that is, in my life right now, I look at a Coues deer hunt. I'm like, I could either probably elk hunt and have that time, or I could go on a Coues deer hunt, but I probably can't do both. And it's really hard. It's really hard to say I'm not going to elk hunt so I can go Coues deer hunting. You know what I mean? It's just, it's tough. And I know that's like such a first world problem, but it just is what it is.
Yeah. You just got to choose the hunts that like you're truly passionate about. I mean, I wouldn't, if it was either or, I wouldn't skip elk hunting to go Coues deer hunting.
Yep. Yeah. I wish they'd rut down there in like March.
Yeah. Right. Just a little later.
It sucks in this country that really the only thing we have to hunt in March is pigs. And, that's such a limited opportunity. And I don't know about you, but I've never found a public land spot where I was like, that's worth driving to for pigs. Like I've bumped into them in places down like in Oklahoma and stuff, but it's never been like, that's worth the trip. And so March is sort of that dead zone, which really sucks.
Yeah, it does. I usually kind of cherish the month of March because I am gone so much the rest of the year that like you said, there's really nothing to do in March. And so I tend to spend a lot of time in one spot, which is really nice.
Yeah. That's kind of how I look at January now.
Yeah.
I mean, especially backing off of some of the shows and stuff. And January and February, it feels good to be home and work and not be like, okay, I got to cram everything in to leave. And you still find, at least I still find ways to get out some, but it's, I get that too. I just wish I know how long, especially, you're going to get this more and more living in Fargo now. You're going to be like, man, I kind of wish there was something in March to do.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So you haven't arrowed a Coues deer yet, have you?
I have not. Nope, I have not.
Does anybody get one when you guys go down there? Has anyone got one?
Yeah. So last year, both Brian Call and Ryan Lampers killed. And then this year, those guys were down there again. They weren't staying in camp with us, but Brian and his camera guy both killed Coues bucks, and then Lampers killed a mule deer down there.
Oh, nice.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
So they had a pretty good trip.
Yeah, they're on a roll. I don't know. Did you spend more time looking for mule deer or Coues deer? Because I wonder about that for just a personal trip, or is it just opportunistic?
Just opportunistic, yeah. And most of what we were seeing were Coues deer. There are a few mule deer, but it wasn't like you'd have to go farther north from where we were to really get into them. It was mostly Coues bucks that we were in.
You guys are pretty far south, right?
Yeah. I mean, basically almost to the border.
Really?
Yeah. Wait, yeah. You can see it. So
did you run into it? So I mentioned when we were talking on the phone, Eddie Claypool is a past guest on here, and he's hunted Coues deer a lot. And he's the guy who kind of figured out, or he told me he finds doe groups and he goes down during the rut and he sets up in between them, and he killed a fair amount of them out of a tree stand. But he said, he'd been in his stand and seen people cross the border sneaking through and the trash. And did you run anything like that?
So I have yet to see a person, but there's trash everywhere, backpacks, shirts, pants, blankets, water bottles. You see even like the carpet, like boot coverings, like to decrease noise and whatever. There's border patrol everywhere. I haven't seen any people, but definitely all the remnants. We actually found an ID card for one border crosser this year, and then looked it up and saw that he had made it across and then got arrested. And so he had a court date or whatever. So it's a pretty wild thing. Like it's honestly, it's a little heartbreaking to see all that stuff, because you're like, imagine how bad, like I'm not condoning border crossing, but imagine how bad it must be to want to risk that and come across. I mean, that's rough.
Yeah, that's a wild, it's a very hard thing to conceptualize. Like it's really hard to imagine being in a place where you're like, I got to get out of here so bad. I'm crossing this desert at night. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've been out in deserts at night and never felt like a strong urge to just keep covering ground.
No. And it's nasty down there. It's not big mountains, but it's mountainous, and everything is trying to, and everything pokes you and grabs you and whatever. And I can't imagine trying to cover ground at night. You would just end up just ripped up.
It'd be horrible.
Yeah.
Do you, when you're down there, because I have this weird affinity for the desert. Like I love being there and hunting in those kind of arid places. It's just such a different world, but it makes me appreciate so much being in like a nice deciduous forest at home where like I can just walk through there and not be afraid that there's pain everywhere.
Right. Oh yeah. It definitely makes you appreciate just being able to sit down. Like,
oh man,
just go out turkey hunting and you can just sit wherever and you're not going to like stab yourself.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the coolest thing for me is the first time I'd ever been down there was, I guess 3 seasons ago now. But like, I was like, oh, going to the desert, but there is so much life. Like when you get up close to it, it looks just, barren. But man, it's pretty cool. Like how much is actually living out there.